Hearty welcome to DCI webinars. Dental Council of India, a statutory body formed under the Act of Parliament, regulates dental education and dental profession with the aim to maintain the highest standards of dental education in the country. Dental Council of India, under the presidency of Dr. Dibendu Mazumdar, has introduced free of cost webinars for the benefit of undergraduates, postgraduates, faculty members, dental practitioners, and all the stakeholders to enhance their knowledge and skills, keeping in view of the modern technology and also the research in the field of dentistry. In addition to the basic concepts such as basic life support, ethics, and infection control. I, Dr. Manjunath P. Puranik, Professor Head, Public Health Dentistry, Government Dental College and Research Institute, Bangalore. I'm extremely honored to be associated with this webinar. As a matter of fact, this webinar will be conducted every Sunday between 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on various topics by eminent national and international speakers. All the eligible attendees will receive a certificate of participation soon after the seminar. On this occasion, Sri Arun Singhji, former Special Secretary, currently CEO of Food Safety Standards Authority of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, has graced the occasion to launch the momentous webinar with his message.
I'm very happy to know that the Dental Council of India is organizing a series of webinars. I think it is the first time a council has taken this kind of initiative, and by this initiative 313 dental colleges in the country will all come together. They'll have a chance to listen to renowned speakers to discuss advances in dentistry. It's a great initiative which will benefit students and the faculty and everybody alike. So I wish them success in this. I've also come to know that the Dental Council is going to start oral cancer diagnosis and cancer and infection control, basic life support and advanced life support. This is also a laudable initiative. I hope Dental Council continues to take forward the excellent work they have done so far in streamlining dental colleges, improving the quality of dental education, and promoting e-learning, which is, I think, is a very good way of sharing the knowledge one institution has with other institutions. So I hope this will continue in future. They'll organize this regularly. I wish them all the best. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Our heartfelt gratitude to the Ministry of Health and Welfare for supporting this program. Dr. Dibendu Mazumdar, President, Dental Council of India. Sir is a renowned scholar and a clinician from the first dental college of the country, Dr. R. Hammond Dental College, Kolkata, received Doctor of Science as well as FDS, RCPS from Glasgow. Sir was elected as the President of Dental Council of India on 2nd of April 2011. Since then, Sir is working very hard to take Dental Council of India to the next level in terms of patient care as well as professionalism. The President, sir, has shared his views and thoughts about the first ever webinar and the webinar series to come.
My dear friends, colleagues, and my beloved students all over India, it gives me an immense pleasure and satisfaction today to announce that Dental Council of India is organizing a series of webinars for the benefit of the students and faculties of 313 dental schools in the country. It is a dream project, not only for me, for the whole Dental Council, and which we are nurturing for the last 1 year. The timing of this webinar could not have been more apt as due COVID-19 pandemic. The students are unable to attend their classes, regular classes now, and we certainly benefited with this initiative. Just from the Dental Council of India, the total project of webinar is totally free of cost in the country to each and every dental college and the students. They don't have to pay not a single paisa or rupees for this. And the password and the whatever is needed for ID, council will give to each and every dental colleges in the country. And the council has selected excellent speaker, national and international speaker, and on each and every subject. I am sure that everyone will accept the fact that it is an monumental task to reach out the students and the faculties of all the dental colleges in the country at the same time with seminars given by the renowned speaker who are the teachers, clinicians, the national and international repute. This idea, which was the first of its kind of DCI, would not have taken a step without the support of my office, my executive members, my chairman of the webinars, all the DCI members. Everybody has participated to make this webinar as a successful. I am happy that number of our members are taking participants as a lecture to give their latest technology in the dentistry. And of course, I have requested our secretary, Dr. Saha, who is a man behind the whole show, to see that first seminar is from his, if possible, from his subject in the present era of COVID-19 in this webinar. I am sure that this initiative will be successful and encourage many more such initiatives in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Sir, for your word of wisdom and encouragement, and for all the efforts you have done us to bring an online platform for all the dentists to enhance their knowledge and skills. I also take this opportunity to congratulate all the professionals and the stakeholders during the launch of this particular program. Before we start, there are some announcements. I request all the participants to attend to these announcements. The webinar carries CD credit points, and to be eligible, the participants have to sit through the entire session uninterrupted. All the participants should give complete and proper details while registration, since these details will be captured for generating CDA certificate. The attendance certificate along with CDA points can be easily downloaded by clicking on the link that each participant will receive on their registered email ID once the above eligibility criteria is met. As a way of continuous improvement, we request all the participants to please fill the feedback form, which will be automatically displayed once the webinar concludes. With this, we are launching the first ever DC webinar titled Pandemics and Dentistry. COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization with sufficient number of cases and deaths. The main reason for this is the coronavirus. Dentists are among the highest risk categories for transmission as well as contraction of the coronavirus, with many procedures having the potential to transmit the aerosols. Asymptomatic carriers as well as patients with respiratory distress may present in our OPDs. While it is important to treat these patients, it is equally important to prevent transmission of infection to the patients and the dental healthcare personnel. The speaker of today's webinar is Dr. M.B. Ashwath Narayanan. I am immensely pleased and humbled to introduce Sir for the gathering. Sir is a registrar currently at the Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai, member of expert group for developing dental surgery practice guidelines during COVID-19 Niti Aayog, member of National Oral Health Policy, Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, State Nodal Officer, NOHP Tamil Nadu National Health Mission, member Civils Committee for Public Health Dentistry, Dental Council of India, as well as member of expert groups in Peri-Fascial Economy, FDI, World Health Organization, National Board of Exams, NAC, as well as Indian Association of Public Health Dentistry. With this, I cordially invite Dr. M.B. Ashwath Narayanan, sir. Over to you, sir. We are very much eager to hear your presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Matru Deva Bhava, Pitru Deva Bhava, Acharya Deva Bhava, Atithi Deva Bhava. It's been a great honor for me to come into this webinar. Before I start, I would like to thank the President, the Secretary, the Executive Committee, and the General Body of the Dental Council of India for this extraordinary initiative. I see it as a public health measure. It may be a webinar for students, but imagine at the end of the day when all the webinars are done and when all these slides and all these knowledge which have been given by great people throughout the series is available to the common man. Everything about dentistry will be available to every individual in the country. A truly public health measure, and I'm extremely happy to note that I'm part of this program. I would like to thank at this point Dr. Manjunath Puranik, an excellent speaker himself, who has been kind enough to give good words about me, the head of public health dentistry, the Mecca of public health dentistry in India at Bangalore. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. And to the gathering today, I have a humble request. Listen to this lecture first as a normal human being in this planet. Then think of yourself as a citizen of this country who has responsibilities towards the whole population. And lastly, think of yourself as a dental surgeon. This slide shows about pandemics. I have enlisted 20 of the biggest pandemics which have affected humankind. You can see the slide on the small picture on the side, when it says, what do you do in 2020? I wash my hands. I'm very glad that we are alive to sit and wash our hands to answer the questions in 2021. That is how a human population should look at a pandemic. If you see the details from the beginning to the bottom, the fatalities have been either whole villages, 500,000, 5 million, half of the population, and so on, until the last one, which was Zika. The count is still on for Zika, and we are now with COVID-19. And the names on the left are all the names of wonderful civilizations of those times. People who thought they were infallible, nothing can touch them. The greatest empires have been brought to their knees not by war, but by pandemics. So, my dear people, please consider this lecture primarily as a human race fighting against a pandemic, and that we should come out of this very successful, which we will, in a very scientific manner. Today, we are better equipped with these sort of pandemics. To just refresh what you will need to know about a disease. In the natural history of disease, when there is a susceptible host and an exposure to a particular organism, you have either infection or no infection based on your immunity. And if you are infected, you may go on to clinical disease. And if your immunity is very good, you will recover. And unfortunately, if it is not, we may die. On the other hand, at the distance between the exposure and the onset of disease is called incubation period. This is the single most important marker in all our activities, which we have been following all along. The incubation period is divided into two parts as latent and infectious. We should be worried about those infectious people who can go around and spread disease. This is a simplification of this wonderful diagram that most of you would have seen. It seems wonderful to me. Maybe people have just crossed this page in Park and Park when they studied public health history. It is a famous chart by Leval and Clark, which talks about period of pre-pathogenesis and pathogenesis, before the occurrence of disease. Because COVID is new, we know nothing about COVID. The curative matters are still not in the book and not evidence-based. So the best option that we have to fight this disease is during the pre-pathogenesis phase. And if you see at the bottom, health promotion and specific protection are the only two things that we can do today to fight COVID. So let me tell you again, primordial prevention before it affects man is the best way that we can prevent COVID from becoming worse. Three terms which have been commonly used. I want you to see the small white square at the right. R0 is R0. It's the basic reproduction number. It is the average number of secondary cases arising from a primary case. If I am infected and if I give it to only one other person, then R0 is 1. Suppose if I am infected and I am able to infect more than 1 or 2 people, then R0 is greater than 1, which means that an epidemic is starting. If R0 is less than 1, if I am not able to transmit disease, then the epidemic is contained. But if R0 continues to be 1 always, it means the disease will continue to be there. So if you exponentially see the definition on the left side, an epidemic is an unusual occurrence of a disease in a population far in excess of normal values. R0 keeps increasing. The bigger the R0, the epidemic is bigger. If R0 is always 1, then there are endemic diseases. Each of us are living in various parts of the world. We have certain diseases which are endemic to our community. We have learned to live with it, cohabit with it, fight with it, and come out unscathed. On the other hand, certain diseases we have conquered today. Smallpox is eradicated, which means R0 has become 0. We have not been able to transmit to anybody else. A pandemic, of course, is an epidemic worldwide. So these three terms are based on your R0 scores. Now, why is R0 so important? If you see this slide here, which shows R0 for seasonal flu at the bottom and measles at the top. COVID has an R0 between 1.5 and 4.5, which means if an individual is infected and is a carrier, and if he spreads, one person can spread it to 4.5 people. It is higher than the normal infection rate for seasonal flu and other respiratory syndromes of recent times. So, which is why we have to be careful of COVID. Now, this is another diagram which many webinars have put forth so far. Here it's about pandemics, which can be divided into the pre-pandemic intervals and pandemic intervals. The pre-pandemic interval is the investigation and recognition time until we find out, what disease are we fighting against? What do we call this? And what may tentatively be the cause for that disease? And once the pandemic starts, it initiates, then you see the acceleration and the deceleration. There's a huge mountain which goes up and comes down. This is how it had occurred earlier. When a population was afflicted by disease earlier, everybody was out in the open. Everybody got themselves exposed to the disease. There was a huge break. And once Darwinian theory took over, and all the fittest people alone survived. The rest of the people died, and then the disease came down to normal. This is how a disease would have normally progressed earlier. And finally, the preparatory phase for the public health professionals. I'll come back to this slide again to you a little later. I'm very proud to be an Indian. I've always been proud. This particular way in which we have dealt with our pandemics, I'm really proud to be an Indian. When we see the newspapers of the mortality in all the areas in the so-called advanced countries and what we see in our country, I'm proud to be an Indian again, simply because these 5 lockdowns which were effectively done by the government, and more importantly, proud to be an Indian. Every Indian stood behind this lockdown, stayed at home and made it almost a great success. These lockdowns have played an extraordinary role in controlling the pandemic in our country. Surprised, let me tell you, COVID spread rapidly across this world in a span of less than 3 months. December 31, 2019, 27 pneumonia cases in Wuhan. Jan 19th, 9th on 2020, novel coronavirus detected as the causative agent, pre-pandemic phase. Okay? Then you're coming to the pandemic part. Jan 20th, 2020, it spreads to 3 countries outside China, Thailand, Japan, and Korea. 31st January 2020, 20 countries already. 9,826 cases, including India. And March 13th, 123 countries. First reported death in India. Imagine, within 3 months, we have had the first death for a disease which happened elsewhere. And the day before yesterday, I took the June 26th data. There's 94 lakh people confirmed the cases with almost 5 lakh deaths. And all the 215 countries in the world and the regions and the territories, all of them have been affected. This is a data bank which you can see when you open the WHO Corona Disease Center. It's the COVID dashboard. I have a small figure in the right. It's a map which is on the screen. Whichever place you tap with your mouse, you will get the number of people affected and number of people dead. And now see this. See this table on the left. Amazing table. You see the advanced countries and you see Southeast Asia. We are also a developing country. We are going towards the advanced country stage. But if you can see the number of deaths, it's only 19,651. I say 19 only, not because I don't understand the pain, but because when I told you about pandemics earlier, I was talking about millions. And see the Americas, 2.35 lakh deaths. See Eastern Mediterranean and Europe. The numbers are so high and the numbers are so less in India, in Southeast Asia. This, my dear viewers, is a single important step to tell that we have progressed extraordinarily well over the years into being a wonderful healthcare delivery system. This is our Indian chart. If you see, 15,301 deaths at the bottom. If you take 3 big states, Delhi, Gujarat, and Maharashtra, above 1,000, and Tamil Nadu, which is reaching 1,000, the number of deaths in these 4 states alone accounts to almost 12,000. And the remaining 31 together is less than 3,000 because of COVID. Shouldn't we really be happy that in spite of almost 2 lakh cases coming in, around 15,301 in the major cities have been affected and are mortal. Now I go to the next slide. Why has this happened? The lockdown has given the Indian citizen a greater chance of being alive than the citizens of the advanced countries. Why? The death rate is less than 3% in our country. We all know that as time passes in a pandemic, there is a greater chance for survival of those getting infected. So if somebody was infected in, say, March, and I'm infected, say, in June, these 3 months is a big lifesaver, because the reason is that the doctors and scientists know more about COVID-19 now than what they did 3 months ago. Hence, they are able to treat their patients far better. The whole modality of treatment has changed now, as you are all aware, from what we started earlier and what we are doing today. I have a small slide on that to just tell you how we have differed in our treatment plan. Secondly, this isolation of lockdown has resulted in a lesser spread of disease. Even those infected staying at home have a better chance of being alive. I would tell you that this is a great sanitary awakening in a different format. The whole country, because of this isolation, all the communicable diseases has come down. the wonderful sanitary measures that each of us is undertaking is going to help us in future into fighting communicable diseases to a very great deal. See the brighter part. And now there are close to 150 projects going on around the world to form a vaccine for the disease. And the very fact that we are going to be alive to receive the vaccine is itself a great measure. This lockdown has also given the health planners a better opportunity to shore up all the required resources. Between March and June now, the number of testing kits, the number of PPEs, the number of available beds, the number of available drugs, and the treatment modality, we have all improved it so well that if somebody got COVID today, the chances of him coming out unscathed is very high. We know today that almost 60% of the people affected by the disease are getting cured and have come outside in spite of the small amount of mortality. So, dear people, we have saved thousands of lives, thousands. There are no established rule books to globally tell us how to emerge out of a lockdown. This is the first time everybody is learning. We are also learning. In the Tamil Nadu MGR Medical University from where I come, we made a projection in March end. April 1st, we gave a projection. It is just on the right side. Please have a look. As of 17th of May 2020, the actual number of reported infections was around 7,000, 6,753. As per the modeling which we had provided, we gave a number of 6,749. Only a difference of 4. How much statistics can help if you have good data? But according to the same modeling, we found that if there was no lockdown, the number of people infected would have been 13,900, almost double. Please go down to the last row. As of 28th of May, the number of actual reported is 12,762. The projections were higher by almost 3,000. What does it show? That the mitigating measures which have been undertaken, even within this small gap, has enabled the modeling to be shored down. But see the last column. If there had been no lockdown, as of 28th May, almost 82,000 people would have been affected. 6 times, 7 times more people would have been affected. So, my dear friends, I'll go to the next slide again. This is a very commonly used statement by everybody. Herd immunity, highly misunderstood. I showed you the first slide. When there is a huge curve which goes and comes down. If we had been unscientific, uncivilized in the animal kingdom, everybody would have been sent outside into the population. Go forth and then fight the disease. A lot of people who had poor immunity would have died. The very old, the very young, the pregnant, the disabled would have just died. And only the fittest would have survived. And then we would have said, yes, herd immunity is achieved because we have successfully fought the diseases and come out. But at what cost to the nation? How many would have died? Is it a scientific way of doing things? No. Herd immunity means, I will just define it for you now. Herd immunity is a form of indirect protection from infectious diseases that occur when a large percent of the population has become immune to an infection, whether through previous infections or vaccinations. The minute you find vaccines, and if everybody is vaccinated, then if everybody goes out into the population, nobody will get disease. So there are 2 measures of getting herd immunity. Going and fighting the disease unscientifically or going with a vaccine. Now tell me, which is a better one? Herd immunity with vaccination is of course a civilized method. We are going towards that. We need time to fight the disease. These lockdowns have given us that time margin to provide a vaccine, to provide preventive measures, so that herd immunity is got with the least number of deaths, least mortality. Once a certain threshold has been reached, then herd immunity gradually eliminates the disease from our population. If you just see the slide on the right side, for COVID, the 1.4 to 3.9, for that amount of R naught, 29 to 74% of the population should be infected. 60% is the number which they all say today. If 60% of the population is affected by the disease, then the chance of the disease dying are very high. But it should be done with minimal mortality. As the testing increases, as everybody gets tested, a lot of numbers will go on increasing. Please do not be afraid. What we should be worried about is anybody dying, which should not happen. It is the duty of the healthcare providers to make sure that this mortality rate is very low. What does herd immunity also do? If this population, the healthy population who's moving around is fully immune, then the people at home, the older ones, the younger ones, the pregnant ones, the disabled ones, they are automatically immune because we don't have anybody who carries disease to them. Go back to this slide now. You see a huge spike which would have happened in the beginning. Now, because of a lockdown and an opening, there is, of course, a spike. It is scientific, it is normal common sense that if people are allowed to go outside, they will get the disease. And if they are tested, they are going to be positive. So once a lockdown is eased, you will see a spike. But instead of the huge spike that you saw earlier, the spikes will become smaller and smaller. As the lockdowns are extended and extended, the spike date will become later and later. There is a possibility that the spike might completely flatten. So we have to make a decision when to stop the lockdown. When is the pandemic going to stop? Now, I have a few questions which have come to me during the discussion of this particular slide earlier. Will the virus disappear after the extended lockdown? No, the virus will continue to be there. When will the virus effect disappear? Only when 60% of the population gets exposure and immunity. What is the problem with getting herd immunity immediately? We do not know how many patients will die. Anybody who wants herd immunity, will you be willing to send your child, your father and mother outside to go and see whether immunity exists or not? No, that's not the right way of doing it. Who are at the high risk for mortality? What I told you earlier, people aged more than 60 years, those with comorbid conditions like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac problems and failure, and healthcare professionals due to the increased viral load. These people have to be protected very carefully during this lockdown so that when the disease has toned down completely, they can go and lead a normal life. What is our ultimate aim? Must be always to reduce the number of deaths, control the transmission of virus till it is no more a public health problem, and reduce the morbidity by early intervention. So then what are the solutions to increase herd immunity? We must allow the healthier and younger people to move around, but responsibly. I'm not just asking you to go around. We should stop all activities which allow for crowd accumulation, entertainment, education, religion, these areas where there can be a rapid spread of disease. 2, you can isolate people with comorbid conditions and old age people. Even at home, ask the young to be separated from the old. The third important thing we can do is designate certain hospitals only for COVID in all the areas and not make COVID wards in each hospital. Let a particular hospital be fully for COVID cases, and the remaining hospitals can be designated for various risk factors like cardiac and hypertension, nephro, diabetes, so that these diseases can also be treated simultaneously by the healthcare providers without putting them at risk to COVID cases. Listen, tell me everybody, in our house, we are all leading lives normally before COVID. If someone suffers from a fatal viral infection, a fatal causing viral infection, say we had mumps, we had measles, we had chickenpox, do we immediately worry about examinations and economy? Did we not say, no, don't worry about all that. This is more important. Stay at home. We'll isolate him for 10 or 14 days. Once he becomes normal, then we'll send him out for regular work. That is the same thing that which needs to be done today. The same thing which needs to be done responsibly by all the people of our country today. We should have a graded and staggered restart of movement. So, what am I telling you? Control the source of infection, break the chain of transmission, and reduce susceptibility to infection. If these 3 are done, then the drugs can have a go. So, COVID as a pandemic, when I gave a lecture for the Dental Council of India, Tamil Nadu chapter in the end of March, I had a very, very a low look on the future because I was staring at a pandemic, and as a public health professional, I knew the pitfalls. Today, when I speak to you, 3 months later, I am speaking with confidence that the toughest part we have overcome. We are crossing a well. There is no point in saying I crossed the well, half the well extraordinarily well. I'm still going to fall inside. I need to cross the well completely to go to the other side. We are nearly there. This is the latest treatment which is being done now here. One is called the LAMP module, the other one is the PALM module. The LAMP one is the low molecular weight heparin which is given. Today we have understood that the ventilators which were given earlier were more harmful, that the clots need to be broken down. We are giving azithromycin, methylprednisolone, which really stops the rush, the cytokine rush which goes into the lungs. Then the prone position, which makes breathing better. And along with that, wherever it is required, we have been giving favipiravir and remdesivir. Favipiravir and remdesivir are solely prerogatives of the doctors who are treating you. The other four are routinely given now when patients see happy hypoxia, or when the pulse oximeter, which you can use regularly at home, shows that you are going below 85. So read the words on the left. With this, we can beat the virus. If someone tells you everyone is going to get infected anyway, tell them that you are willing to wait to be the last person. Who knows, by then we might even have a vaccine. So, dear viewers and my dear friends, what I would like to tell you at this point of time regarding the pandemic is we are facing a very tough and a strong organism who is trying to subdue us. We have scientifically and correctly fought a wonderful war to make the damages very less. A very small amount of portion remains. Let us continue to fight well and succeed in eliminating this pandemic, so that the 21st pandemic named COVID will have a golden glow when it talks about India. Now, let me come to dentistry, the second part of my lecture. This slide will enthuse all the people who are seeing these pictures. The slides earlier were a little new to them, but this is something which they are very much interested in. Today, we have 313 dental colleges, 50 government and 263 private, almost 27,329 students enrolled last year. Now, see that beautiful slide below. I said beautiful because, I am enthused by numbers. Between 1950 and 1990, 40 years, the total number of students who were admitted was 18,640. Most of them were government colleges, and if somebody has passed out in 1990, it is 30 years now. And if he was 20, they are all above 50 years. And anybody who has joined in 1950, they've all retired from service. So 18,700 people are all above 50 years of age now. Then come to 1990 to 2000, 53,420 now students that time. Anybody who has completed in 2000, now think about what he has passed out 20 years now, 20 years earlier, he's all in the 40-year age group. Now the number of colleges is 313. Even if you assume 100 staff for every college, only 31,300 jobs are vacant. 18,000 in the first part have taken over, another 12,000 or 13,000 from the second group have taken over that job. So which leaves it with around less than around 25,000 people who need jobs, those who are enrolled till 2000. 20,000 people. Everybody, all the associations clamor that the associations should do well. The council should do well to increase the job opportunities in the government of India and other places. Even if there was a dentist in every PHC, and assuming there were almost 30,000 PHCs in the country, all the 30,000 people who finished before 2000, they would all be placed in these government institutions. Done? Now see the red gang. 2000 to 2010, 171,000 dentists have come outside. Now where will they go and join? This is the question which has been put to others. Now let me tell you a good answer. A professional course, somebody joins a professional course to go out and practice that profession. You see somebody studying law, he goes and opens a law office. You see an engineer, he goes to an engineering firm to start engineering work. Now, if you are a doctor, if you are a dental surgeon, and if you are given a degree, we should go on and start practicing. Whereas we think of job opportunities only as a college or a government job. That's not the case. My dear students and friends here, I would like to tell you, think of all the people who passed between 1950 and 1960. They all came from various parts of the state to come and join into a single government institution. On completing of that particular course, they all went back to their respective places and started practice with hope in their eyes, skill in their hands, and courage in their hearts. The same thing is what is needed today. Everybody wants to concentrate in the 60% of the urban areas, which is why a very wrong scenario has been created that dentistry has reached a saturation level. No, my dear gentlemen. Between 2010 and 2015, whoever have enrolled, they would have completed dentistry just now or 2-3 years. Those who have joined after 2016, they are all still students now. So if you see, there are 171,300 students who have joined dental programs who would have completed in 2015 and are in 5 years of practice now. The remaining people, the total that I have given at the bottom is 4,97,000 who have registered from the beginning till date, of which almost 2.5 lakhs are still yet to touch the streets. The 171,300 that I am talking about are the ones who are now going around starting a dental practice. So believe me, when I compare the population of India, 130 crores, and I put on the numbers of 1,71,000, assuming everybody who got into dentistry got into practice. Think of all the people who are old and aged who don't practice now. Think of the people who have gone out of the country. Think of the people who have not practicing at all. Then the numbers will fall drastically. But even assuming everybody is practicing, today there is one dentist for 10,000 people based on the 171,300. Leave the 18,640. They're all the established practitioners who are already in their zones now. The next set of people who are in their 40s, they have a lot of commitments to go into practice. These newer ones are the lions who have just got into practice now, who are eager to prove themselves. They have to find out which 10,000 of the population of the country they want to serve. The country is standing with open arms. A huge population is waiting for your service. Still, if you take the 5 lakh population of dentists as of today, still our population to dentist ratio is 1:3,000, which with increasing awareness, imagine a single individual with so many unmet needs. So dentistry has a large scope. Believe me, I'm giving you facts and figures in front of your eyes that there are still of unexplored areas where you have to go and start practice and grow. Rome was not built in a day. Practices are not made that way also. With this preamble telling you that dentistry is an extraordinary profession today, will you be surprised if I tell you that there are 280,000 chartered accountants in our country today? It means there are so many people who are going to do accounts. If that many people are required for the population, just tell me how many healthcare workers are actually required. There's a huge gap. We need to fill the correct gaps. Why are the dentists eager to attend clinics? Now, when COVID came, the first few days everybody was inside. Then suddenly they felt we have to go back to start practicing, sir. Why? The first is, of course, professional interest. God has given me a skill. I need to put it to use to alleviate the pain of the people. The second reason, it may be the only source of income. Third reason, sometimes with the younger ones, the fear of patients going to another practice. Fourth, a very logical one between the groups that I told you, those who are 40 and below. The economic demands like EMI, salary, rent, household expense, etc. The fourth set, the older ones, we lose track of our work schedule if we simply stay at home. There might be a time with the senior practitioners when they sit at home like me, they're finally very comfortable to close practice because they're used to this happiness which they never had earlier. Next, there's a void in ambition. Everybody needs to keep working every day so that they can meet their ambitions. If you simply sit at home, you do not know where you're going. Of course, in a few houses where the others do all the work, the dental surgeon has no work at home. But otherwise, if he wants to help at home, there's a lot of activity awaiting his hands. And lastly, as a dental surgeon, we have no fear. We are not in the first line of duty seeing COVID patients. If we have been treating COVID patients, you will know mortality. We have not seen mortality. So my dear friends, because we have not seen that, we do not know what fear is. Sometimes it is better to fear when fear is the right behavioral change. Next, why is dentistry separate from other activities? We have unique characteristics that warrant additional infection control considerations. The caring for patients require airborne precautions not possible in most dental settings as they are not designed or equipped to provide this standard of care. Today, after this COVID came, the dental industry has risen. The population, the manufacturers of various devices have increased. They gave exorbitant prices in the beginning. They are all giving us wonderful prices now. All the equipments which we never had earlier, which probably was also required for HIV, for hepatitis C. We didn't have them earlier, even though it was there. We were treating patients with deadly diseases. We were happy at that time because we knew the course of the disease. There was a cure for the disease. There were preventative modalities. Now, because of COVID, all our clinics are going to become better. Just imagine we are really going towards a stage where we'll be providing sanitized care to the individual. We do not have a respiratory control program like in regular theaters. So if there is some emergency, we may really not be able to take care. The third point is we have a 99% risk to contract and spread as a super spreader. A lot of my good friends, the younger friends, opened their clinics, and a few of them have then closed their clinics and then come back. A few of them are still doing some certain of the procedures as mandated. Mass infection can occur without a clue, just like that. Asymptomatic carriers are a reality. And then our patients, how well are they protected? How truthful are they with us? We do not know. There are no vaccines available. The assistants who are providing support to our practice, how well are they protected? Will they be affected? Is there a protocol for taking care of them? I have a lot of youngsters who tell me that they have taken insurance for all the people in their clinics. Clinic should be run as a business and a social service where some amount of profit must come at the end of the day, isn't it? Then, next, if one person is affected in your clinic also, a contract tracing will start. There will be media bashing, there will be legal issues, and Consumer Act is not forgiving, and you will be sued by labor laws. These are all the things that I was talking about when I was talking in March also, with apprehension. Today, I see the horizon is very bright. Today, most of the doubts and the problems which existed at that time, the dental profession has risen in its capability to mitigate most of the factors which can honestly be shared in the dental clinic. Therefore, the question which is in everybody's mind, when will an epidemic end? There are only two ways of an epidemic ending. One is a medical end, the other is a social end. The medical end will come when there is not even a single person who is infected or not, doesn't exist. Is that possible? It is possible only when vaccination is available and a worldwide mechanism to put it into place. Smallpox was the last disease which was eradicated worldwide. We have eradicated polio. So it is not impossible, but a medical end will take very long. And as we people continue to keep staying at home and there is a frustration growing around and people want to come out, a social end will come to the epidemic. When people start feeling, okay, I'm now weighing the risks against the advantages and I find the advantages are more than the risks. On that day, the social ending will come. How do we go about that? How do we put this to an end? The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India has given guidelines on 1995. Very clear guidelines on what you can do and what you should not do. To be careful. The Dental Council of India has given its own set of guidelines on what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. I am not going to spend the time here to tell you what are all the equipments and other things available. The numerous webinars which have been conducted in the last 3 months have told us about how the waiting room should be, how the sterilization should take place, what are the matters for PPE, how should the air be maintained, and so on and so forth. Please use all of them, whichever you think are appropriate, to make sure these two important guidelines from the statutory bodies are taken care of. Only then will you be able to go to this third one, which is a registration under the Clinical Establishment Act. make sure all of you open this PDF, read it thoroughly, that every dental practice in this country must register itself through the Clinical Establishment Act so that later you can always legally fight. Because if this is not done, we are in very troubled waters. The directives that you should give your patients before you start. Inform your patients that you are back to work. Call them. They will be happy, you will be happy. You don't need to consult on phone anymore. However, tell them pain management will be given priority and rules need to be followed. The present health and family welfare guidelines of India need to be followed until new guidelines are issued. I would like to stress this because that's how the rule of the law is. Clinical practice must be by appointment. Do not allow random walk-in. Patient plus one attendant must be absolutely and perfectly followed. And lastly, tell the patients additional charges applicable to take care of additional precautionary measures for safety and collect only digital payments. If you follow the directives of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the Council of India, take all the precautions that you have been hearing in all the webinars so far, which is easily available to all of you. And if you follow these rules, I think it's perfectly fine to do whatever you're doing. Also understand that the dentists have a legal right to reject patients with unreasonable demands. The other side, now you are afraid to go, the patient says, do this, you can always say no if it is not according to the guidelines. The horizon is bright. The well is 3/4 crossed. Please make a decision what you should follow appropriately to be a good citizen of the country, to take the country forward. That we do not spread the disease, we do not get the disease, we take care of our family. Just think, in a whole lifespan of 65 years, average lifespan of India, in a lifespan of 40 years or 30 years of practice, 3 months of practice or 4 months of practice, if that itself is going to affect you very badly, something is very wrong in the way we are practicing. If those 3 or 4 months suffering, we are not the only ones who are suffering. Every sector is suffering. The government, when they listen to whatever we are talking, is listening to only 5 lakh people totally. If everybody in dentistry registered, everybody student today, the total population that he has to care about in 136 crores is 500 people. 500,000 people. So think of all the difficulties of all the other specialties also, other fields I mean, farming, small-scale industries, X, Y, and Z. So we are we are the elite of the society. We are the health focus who need to guide everybody. So when you go with caution. Earlier I was saying, please don't go. Now I'm telling you, be very, very, very cautious to follow the guidelines. The ultimate aim of the medical profession must be to eliminate the need for its own existence, which means that a day when a doctor is not required at all, when he has taught all the people all the preventive measures to avoid disease, that day he has done his duty properly. And whenever you do any job in your clinic, whenever you're doing anything, always remember, greatness is not in doing extraordinary things. It is in doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. In this centenary year of starting of dental education in India, may we reinvent dentistry for the future. May we all give protected, safe dental treatment to all our patients. May we all protect ourselves so that we do not suffer from any disease. Strike a good balance between these two and may dentistry grow forever. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. I once again thank the Dental Council of India, the Executive Committee and the General Body for this extraordinary initiative. A great honor to start this program today with a wonderful moderator. And I'm very glad to all the participants who have been listening to this seminar. Just remember that at the end of the year, if there are 52 wonderful seminars in the Dental Council repository, anybody can access that. That is true great education. Thank you very much again. Jai Hind again. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Sir, you have given us a lot of facts and figures, and similarly the perspectives and directions. So more than anything, I feel you have given us a lot of hope in times when it was almost reduced to zero, especially among professionals. So your lecture or the first webinar will always be remembered by all of us. Let's have some deliberations. Sir, as a matter of fact, we have received many questions. There is an unprecedented response for our seminar. Due to paucity of time, we will be able to take a few questions.
Yes, sir, please.
Can we start with the questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So we have a question. How to protect the dentist from pandemic and economically, and many dentists coming out every year, but there is no proper source of to run their lives.
Oh, sir, I had an answer for this. Probably, I would just like to reiterate again.
Yes,
It is not that scope for dentistry is not there. That is a very wrong idea to spread. Because if there were 100 people selling fish in the same road opposite to each other, and then they say there is no way in which I am able to sell fish, selling fish is not economical, that would not be the right answer, isn't it? So I would like the youngsters and the people who ask these questions to take some time off. See, when government institutions were there, the skill was possible and given to all the students. Because the number of institutions were very less, the public-private partnership to join a private institution. So I would like all of you to look that more opportunities have come by the opening of these private institutions where you have got new skill sets. I request you to update those skills, become more skillful, more confident, and find better areas where you can start your practice and grow. It is a long way. I have completed 25 years of practice, which has grown from a small single room, difficult position to where I am today. So as I was telling you earlier, it takes a long time to build a good practice. So the skills is what is going to help the next generation. May they get the requisite skills, use COVID as an opportunity to get those skills. Dentistry is still good. They can do well. Do not fear. I'm telling this confidently. And the second part, there is a financial loss to everybody. Everybody is talking about a loss, including the government. So this is a very small duration. Please tide over, and we shall overcome. This too shall pass. We will come out better, as I told you. Do not worry.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. There are three questions in one response. The first question is, what will be the future of students? Second, any changes in UG and PG exam patterns? Third, DC, does it give any specific guidelines for dental treatment to the colleges?
Yes, sir. I think this is probably somebody who is not part of the regular stream. The examination criteria and that is a prerogative of the Dental Council of India. They are doing their homework into making the best possible ways of coming out with an answer and a solution. The second part of your question was on the last part. Will you please repeat that part exactly again?
Yes, sir. That was about the examination pattern.
No, that is, I told you, it is a Dental Council prerogative. They are working on it. They will come out with the answer. It will be available on the site once the work is done. It is their prerogative. The other part.
Fate of the students.
No, complete there was something else in that statement.
Yes, sir. 1 minute. So in that there are three parts. First was, what is the fate of the students? Second, pattern for UG and PG exams.
Okay.
Third, will DCA give guidelines for dental colleges?
Yeah. This is already available, sir. It is already available in the website. It has been circulated to all the institutions. So there are established guidelines which the institutions should scrupulously follow. The Dental Council is a statutory body. It has taken great pains to make these regulations and rulings. I think it is the duty of the colleges to follow them ditto word to word. Next question, sir.
Yes, sir. If you have to start a new dental clinic, what would be the design changes we have to incorporate?
I think this will be one of the webinars in the later times when somebody is talking about practice management. But anyway, as of today, I think now that the population who are living now have been exposed to a huge pandemic, and as all the dental surgeons have been educated on what are all the various things that are required in a practice, setting up of a practice now will be on more aseptic terms and probably on stricter modalities which have to be followed. Maybe the Clinical Establishment Act itself may start putting down certain guidelines for dental clinics. It should be on any time.
So there is a concern among students. The question goes like this: how to protect ourselves in the college once we start with the procedures? Do we need to wear PPE full time? How long can we expect this pandemic to have an effect on dentistry?
As I told you, sir, until we find a vaccine or a cure for this disease, the pandemic is going to continue medically. And until such time you are sure that if a patient is going to suffer from COVID because of your action and he cannot be cured, if you are sure he can be cured, you may do whatever you want and get away with it. But when you do not know the treatment modality, I think all the care that should be taken must be taken. Wearing a PPE is very difficult, sir. I tried once before giving my first webinar. I wore all the garments from head to toe, the goggles and all that. 20 minutes down the line, I was pouring inside. I was tired. The simple act of wearing a mask and going outside is causing so much stress. But now I've got used to it now. If astronauts were saying, the PPE was very difficult, they will never be able to go to space. Similarly, I think over a period of time, just like how surgeons have learned to wear all their gowns and proceed with surgery, we will also in time know how to work with this in a better way. Better products will come which will make us more comfortable. I see a good future where we will all be well protected.
So thank you so much, sir, for your inputs, which definitely would carry on for a long time. So with this, we would come to an end of the question and answer session. Next slide.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manjunath.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody.
I request all the participants to fill in the feedback form, which is available, which definitely will help us to improve the quality of webinar. I also take this opportunity to inform the audience about the next webinar, which is going to be held on 5th of July 2020. The title of the presentation will be Infection Control and Need of Changing Oral Surgical Practice in the Present Scenario. The presenter is Dr. Dhirendra Srivastav, while the moderator is Dr. Vikas Jupar. I expect all the audience to be there with us once again. So with this, we are coming to an end of the presentation. I take this opportunity to thank one and all who have helped us in making of this webinar. We are extremely grateful to the President, to the Secretary, executive members, as well as the technical team who have supported this initiative. My special gratitude goes to our Secretary, Dr. Sabyasachi Saha, who led this initiative from the front, as our President Sir has put a man behind the show. He was there for all the meetings, he interacted and gave us the guidance and directions as and when required, and he was ably assisted by a team of youngsters to name Mr. Mayank, Sunil, and Mr. Mukesh and others. Also, I'll be grateful to Dr. Virendra Goyal, who was helpful in giving us the technical inputs at various stages of this webinar. With this, I conclude with a message: stay safe, take care. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.